When one listens to people in cafes and around supermarkets, not far from where I live, laying down the law about the American election, one particular thing that stuck in my mind was an individual who said, it's Biden's to lose. You must understand, really. Really, the election is Biden's to lose. Well, he lost it. It's like Clinton's book, What Happened? You Lost. One always gets a right chuckle when one reflects upon that book by Clinton. What happened? You lost. Okay, all of her rah-rahs in RTE gave her an interview in the late anyway, but she lost. Biden has lost, because even if at this stage now, it's now 17:11 hours here on the 4th of November in Dublin, 17:11 hours Irish winter time. It's a lot earlier, it's 6 hours and more behind in the US. There's now the outlier chance that Wisconsin may be thrown by them suddenly discovering a whole load of votes, all of which are in favour of Biden. The Supreme Court, I agree with Stixie, the Supreme Court needs to close this down now. It's quite apparent that Trump has won. It's quite apparent he didn't win a huge decisive majority here. It's not a decisive vote, but, not every vote is decisive or huge. It is decisive insofar as it's not contestable. That's how it's decisive. So there is increasing instability growing around the US vote. The Supreme Court of the US needs to intervene and certify what they've got. It's quite clear that Trump is ahead if we exclude Wisconsin from the equation, it's quite clear that Trump is ahead in those other key ground states, particularly states like Georgia. He's going to win Pennsylvania. He's going to do it. He may do it by a margin of, say, 2 or 3 electoral college votes. Doesn't matter. And people are having a canary over this, but they're forgetting 2000 and how close that election was. Al Gore was a far superior character to Biden. I say that with a lot of qualification, but he was, because Gore conceded. Gore conceded like a gentleman. I genuinely almost sympathised with Gore at that particular time, because his concession speech in 2000 was gracious, it was dignified, and it was very, very clear. Gore did the right thing. He did the right thing for his republic. He did the right thing for Bush. Nothing became him like leaving the stage. I'm paraphrasing Shakespeare a lot there, but it was true. Gore behaved very, very well. He absolutely did the right thing. And, I said Gore really did behave presidentially in 2000. Don't expect Biden to do it, because Biden has dementia. He won't know what to say. But getting back to my initial point, this is a foreign country. I'm sitting here in Ireland at the moment. I'm not sitting in the United States of America. This is a great... One always gets a chuckle at, progressive and woke European people who consider themselves to be educated and read The Guardian and the Irish Times and listen to RTE. Sorry, folks, it's not your election. Oh, but I've heard people say the caucus system. No, you mean the Electoral College. The Electoral College. The caucus system is involved in some instances in choosing the candidate, not the vote. The vote is done with the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a sublimely clever system. It works. It works more than anybody in the mainstream media, apart from Fox, is willing to acknowledge. But it works because it's a very crude system, and it's a state-by-state system, the Electoral College. So the Electoral College is very, very heavily fireproofed against fraud. It's very heavily fireproofed against fraud. So even if they manage to in some way pass off Wisconsin as having gone to Biden, doesn't matter, because Trump has just got about enough to get through in the other ones. Trump's going to win Alaska. It could be Alaska that tips the balance here, but it's not, because he's going to win Georgia. He's going to win North Carolina. He's going to get those. He's very far ahead in those. He's very far ahead in Pennsylvania. Trump had won the election. It's now, as I said, it's 17:15 hours here. So I was following all this in the wee hours last night. I said to myself, I'll go to bed. It's a foreign country, sure. I stayed up all night. I stayed up all night. And when I saw that Trump had won Florida, then that he had won Texas, and then that he had won Ohio, I realised that it was mathematically impossible for Biden to catch up in that. Okay, there are normies up in Hoth Harbour at the moment saying, but Biden is still ahead. But it's not over, you numpty. It's not over. All of the signs are showing that Trump is the one who's going to get across the finishing line here. No. They won't listen. So. You almost have the feeling that the people in RTE wish they could vote on behalf of everybody in America. Because the people in RTE, you know, their attitude is commendably candid. Everybody in America is too stupid to vote for themselves. So they should leave it to a crowd of vegans from Ranelagh. Yeah, they're the ones who'll make their mind up for the United States of America. The Americans, according to them, are too stupid to do this. I have very many online friends from America. This has evolved over the past 4 years, particularly when Trump won in 2016. But I've had them from before. Not one of them is stupid. Not one of them is backward. Not one of them is primitive. The vast majority of them are Trump supporters, but not all of them. Although I think that particular minority is diminishing as we speak. There are a number of, sitting here in Dublin, in Ireland, in Europe, I'm giving it through a European angle, really. There's a number of things that Planet RTE don't realise. They don't realise the electoral college system and how strong it is and how robust it is. The electoral college system was established at the start of the United States of America after they broke from Great Britain. It is a genius system. It is an incredibly clever and shrewd system, the Electoral College. The amount of insight that went into that is mind-blowing. And it's working. Ironically, it worked in 2000 when Bush got the election. It certainly worked in 2016 when Trump won the election. Both Bush and Trump won in those respective instances with a minority vote across the United States. It now looks possible that Trump will, by a small margin, win the popular vote this time. But, you know, Planet RTE don't understand the Electoral College. They think that this election is like an Irish presidential election in which there's one constituency, namely the Republic of Ireland, and essentially it's first past the post. Well, it was in the 2018 election. That was a first past the post election because Higgins won beyond 50%, so it was closed at the first count. That was interesting because it showed, because it was a simple first count vote, really it was a first past the post vote, which we don't have here. What it showed was that nearly 25% of people voted for the outsider candidate. Now, I am sceptical about the real outsider nature of Peter Casey, but he was ostensibly running in that election as the bad boy. You know, he'd made remarks about the travelling community. And if you wanted to register a vote against the establishment, you voted for Casey, and I did. I did it with my eyes open about the true nature of what Casey is, but I still did it. He's actually a sound guy, Peter Casey. You know, he's got a lot of Trump's affability. Trump is an affable guy. Trump isn't one of these word salad politicians like Varadkar being the crassest example of it, but sure, they're all like that. So, first of all, as I said, Planet RTE doesn't understand, Club Montrose doesn't understand the Electoral College system. Secondly, Club Montrose does not understand that the American people are not stupid. They come from this whole paradigm of condescension towards Middle America. They want all of the American people to be like chat show hosts. That's their comfortable view of American people. They're not like that. I've met many Middle American people who visit Ireland. I've talked to them online. I have many really good friends from America. They're not stupid. They ain't stupid. And they're complex, and they're tolerant, and they're broad-minded. And kind of an ongoing joke with them is, you know, when is Europe going to realise this isn't their election? It's true. This is not Europe's election. Let's talk about Ireland for a second, because RTE is now undergoing a full China syndrome here. And as much as I might be qualified to comment about the US election, I will say this. I believe this election is turning out fabulously. Because I'm a Jungian. Sometimes people don't always get what they want, but they get what they need. The American people are getting a clear insight now into an equivalent of John Carpenter's 1988 film They Live. In the last 5 minutes, when the hero ends up being killed, he gives up his life. He's a martyr for what he does. But he ends up breaking the signal of the mainstream media. That has happened. That has happened. It happened here in Ireland. It's happening now in the US. And people are looking and they're realising that this has been a rig. Not so much in relation to this specific election, but that there's a much longer, bigger agenda going on. Get back to Ireland. People are realising that RTE is rigged. RTE has always, to certain extents, been rigged, but it happened particularly crassly and viciously since John Williams took over news. I talk about John Williams a lot because John Williams made the very foolish and arrogant and hubristic error of creating these ads in which he signed off with his own name. Not a wise move, Mr. Williams, not a wise move. Because what he did was he personalised it, and he's crystallised himself into being the person responsible for the editorial control of RTE News. So be it, he chose that. It's what they said in The Wicker Man. You did this of your own free choice. You did this of your own free choice. It's interesting. I've been dreaming about The Wicker Man quite a lot because it's an incredible film. Plot spoiler coming here. Plot spoiler around the corner here. When that very naive and arrogant sergeant went to the island, he didn't realise how isolated he was. John Williams is the same. He's isolated himself. The sergeant was shocked, and his prudishness was piqued by, in many instances, many things in the island, but in one instance when he went to the pub on the first night to find a room to stay, by they frankly, and it has to be admittedly, very vulgar sing-songs by the people in the pub. They were scummy sing-songs. It was very, very good cinema. But on the second night that he stayed, the landlord's daughter tried to coax him to have sex with her. And what I realised in a dream last night about that was, what we were witnessing with the sergeant when he refused to go in and have sex with her was the conflict between his pagan soul and his Christian brainwashing. His Christian brainwashing was saying, oh, no, you must wait until you're married. His pagan soul said, I want to have sex with that woman. The woman was trying to rescue him, because if he had sex with her, he wouldn't be a virgin, so it would have broken the pagan spell. She was trying to rescue him. She was doing her best. The next morning she comes in and she says, I invited you in. And then she says, I don't think you need to go, or I don't think you should go to this particular festival that's coming. She did her best. I said it before in relation to The Wicker Man. Every single opportunity was thrown at that man to escape from the situation that he was going into. Every single opportunity was thrown at him. The same with Micheál Martin, he's turned them down. The sergeant and the Wicker Man turned them down. John Williams has turned them down. Well, so be it. Let them pay the price. They're adults. They've acted with their own free will. But in Ireland now, which is a foreign country to the US, first of all, Ireland is extremely homogenous. Secondly, it's a centralised state. So in other words, constitutionally, Ireland comprises one constituency. A lot of people don't realise that. The constituencies for the Dáil, the constituencies for the Shannon, the constituencies for county councils, even county boundaries, they are secondary constituencies. There's only one constituency, and that's the state of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland, in other words. That is our constituency. So, across Ireland now, and my own prediction, I may be wrong, is that this is going to bite very hard before the end of this month, November. I'd go slightly further and say it's going to bite hard within the next 2 weeks. For example, I saw an article about a man who had been getting health insurance for 20 or so years, and these are middle class people somewhere outside of Greater Dublin, outside of Leinster. These people had missed 3 payments of their health insurance because they did not have the money for food. I'll repeat that. They were borrowing cash from their adult children, because this couple would be in their late 60s or possibly early 70s. They were borrowing cash from their adult children to keep the electricity going and to continue to eat. Now, there is only one proper description of that circumstance. That is destitution. That is the correct word to describe the circumstance that those people have found themselves in. I reserve my position on whether or not I sympathise with them. I don't know their circumstances enough, but I'm not gloating at them. Certainly I am not gloating at them. There's going to be a lot more of that. Now, when the lockdown started in March of this year, it started really, I could see it coming in February. I was on a holiday at the time. I was down in a hotel. We were talking about nothing else. I was saying to everybody, this is a flu. It's probably going to kill many people. It's going to be a severe flu, but it is no more than that. No. What do I know about anything? What do I know about anything? But when the lockdown began in earnest in March of this year, anybody who had assets and liabilities needed to liquefy them pronto. I think 99% of people didn't. Why? Because they were listening to RTE. 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, guys, how did that turn out for you? How did that turn out for you? Anybody I was listening to, I told them, get your money out. Get it out. Get it into a state-guaranteed bank account. Put it into prize bonds. Get your money out. Throw your hand in now, guys. Throw your hand in now. Because that first lockdown actually was really devastating to our economy. The second lockdown that we're sitting in now is really just an encore to that. Okay, it's longer, ostensibly it's harsher and all the rest of it, but it's really less significant economically than the huge wallop that hit our economy back in March and April of this year. What happened then was the government put the economy on life support. 350 a week, which is a loan. It's not the dole. 350 a week, and so on. We know the story. But we're now in November seeing that it wasn't 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and we're seeing that there's not going to be a return to what it was. We checked out Normie, remember Thomas Sheridan and myself were discussing on our online channels and elsewhere. We were looking at Normie notice boards and all these people saying, it'll be back to normal by May, possibly early June. Well, it hasn't been, has it? It hasn't. I went on the dole in 2012 because I saw all this coming. I got rid of my liabilities. I'm not being smug. I don't wish to be the slightest bit smug, but I did see that something cataclysmic was coming, and it has. We had a general election this year, and what happened essentially was that Micheál Martin was led... I wouldn't call him that deeply conspiratorial or Machiavellian. Neither would I say that about Varadkar. Varadkar is just a psychopath. Micheál Martin is not a psychopath. But Micheál Martin should have done the Wicker Man and said, I'm out of here. That's it. Don't want to know. Because they did not, he did not deliver the result for Fianna Fáil that maybe he should have got or whatever. But he got they got the result they deserved. So... as I've said before on this channel, I witnessed Micheál Martin's first speech in the Dáil after the general election, and he spent 25 minutes talking about Greta Thunberg. Well, I said, off you go. Off you go, be my guest. You deserve whatever you get. You deserve it with bells on and flames coming out at the top, and a flashing light in the front. You deserve whatever you get. So Micheál Martin is getting it, because what he's done is he's done a John Williams. He's done a Wicker Man here. He has put himself forward through his own free will. He's put himself forward at this critical moment when Varadkar has just been shrewd enough in his own Varadkarish way to stand back. There is a wonderful line at the end of The Wicker Man in which, these very charismatic people, these pagans, they say to him, you are a fool. You are a fool because you chose to be king for a day. And only a fool would choose to be king for a day. And that is precisely what Martin has done, because people are not watching what's underlying, that Martin, in his utter naivety, agreed to a rotating Taoiseach. Now, that also is an insult to the office of the Taoiseach. Varadkar's been insulting the office of the Taoiseach for 3 years with all the cheerleaders in RTE. But the Taoiseach is the head of the cabinet. He's not the head of the Dáil, he's the head of the cabinet. What Martin was effectively saying was, the role of Taoiseach is so nugatory, it's so unimportant, that I might as well just take on this role, which I'm going to hand over to Varadkar in 2 years or so. That is the pagan thing in the Wicker Man of being king for a day. Only a fool would take on a role of Taoiseach that is already from the outset lame ducked. But that is what Martin did. He took on the role of king for a day. Okay, it's not a day, it's not 24 hours as such, but it is the same thing. In order to enjoy authority, unless you're like the President of the United States, who has very fixed terms, very important protection in their system, a person can only be president for 8 years. The only exception in the Constitution was Harry Truman. He put in a grandfather clause for himself. But a person can only be president for 8 years, with an addition if he or she was vice president without an election before becoming the US president. That happened to Lyndon Johnson. So Lyndon Johnson could have done 10 years as president within the present constitutional structure of the US, because he was Kennedy's vice president and he took over after Kennedy was assassinated. But that constitutional restriction on the length of one individual being president is not comparable to king for a day. It's not the same thing. Whereas Micheál Martin has taken on the role of king for a day here, and he didn't have to. That would be like Trump saying, well, I'll be president for 2 years and let Biden take over. I'll let Biden take over my presidency after 2 years in office. Yeah, that's going to work, isn't it? That would be the better American, the better US contrast or comparison to what Micheál Martin has done. If you're listening here in the US, hello from Dublin. Hello. But if you're listening from the US, imagine a president won the election and then said, I will hand over the presidency 2 years into my 4-year term. That is what Micheál Martin has done. It's only just occurred to me as I'm making this particular recording. That is exactly what Micheál Martin has done. He's agreed to being king for a day, and that's why he's a fool. This is a very valuable process we're going through. Don't panic, whether you're in America or Ireland. It'll be okay. We're watching the normies melt down here in Ireland. We're watching these people who thought the government was going to look after them at the banks and all the rest of it. The Karens and Dermots, the Jackson Sophies, the Labradoodle. They are finished. They are toast. They are going over the cliff as we speak at this very moment in time. They are a bigger danger because they're going to go utterly, utterly, utterly psychotic. It's not similar in America. You're going through that already to an extent. But also don't forget it's 50 states. And again, this is what RTE don't understand. It's 50 states. Those states have a great degree of independence and a great degree of separation from one another. Culturally, jurisdictionally, constitutionally, it's 50 states. What America is going through, it has to go through because they're seeing how the Democrats have rigged the media, and now they're trying to... I think the Democrats have accepted that Trump has won. But what they're trying to do now is sabotage Trump's second term. Trump doesn't care. He'll thrive on this. He thrives on conflict. He'll cope. He'll get through this. Trump is psychologically like Teflon. He'll be great with this because it's actually proving that Trump is right. He can say, I told you so. Look how they rigged this. The psychosis, though, is going to happen with these very complacent, smug, middle class people here in Ireland who trusted the government. They trusted the government back in March when they shouldn't have. But the primary blame in that instance was the failure on the part of RTE and the Irish Times to point out that the lockdown of March and April of this year was devastating the economy. If you look at the Irish Times, they're still talking about house prices in Dalkey and the best Chianti that you can have with soy cheese.